All right, class, for your Unit 9 discussion, it's going to give you the opportunity to think about all the different types of hypothesis tests that we've covered throughout the course, and to leave it up to you to actually pick a data set that will be provided in your Wiley Plus course data sets, but to think about what kind of tests to run. And this will require you to understand what the different types of tests that we've covered, which ones are used for comparing means and how many means, which ones are used to compare qualitative variables versus quantitative. So you really have to tie everything together. It's going to be a really good exercise for you to get yourselves ready for doing your project, where you will have different types of real life scenarios and have to decide which particular type of hypothesis test to use in order to answer the research questions. So on your screen, you see the directions for the Unit 9 discussion. You will choose a data set from the source of data files provided in your Wiley Plus program. So in the program, you're going to click on the Read, Study, and Practice link, and then click on the Datasets icon. You should also be able to access the Read, Study, and Practice link through Course Resources. Keep in mind, with the Wiley Plus program, you cannot have more than one Wiley Plus window open at a particular time. Otherwise, you'll get some sort of error message. So just make sure you're closed out of any other Wiley Plus application windows that are open. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you that I'm going to go to Course Resources and pull up the Read, Study, and Practice link and show you where the data sets can be accessed. But you'll pick a data set that's interesting to you, examine the variables provided, and illustrate one type of hypothesis test. So when you look through the data sets that seem interesting to you, you've got to pay attention to whether they are quantitative variables, qualitative, and based on the variables included in the data set, what would be some, hypothetical types of research questions that you could make from the data set. So, a lot of it is going to depend on your own creativity when you look at the different data sets. So let's go ahead and go up here to Content and go to Course Resources. And it may look a little bit different on your screen, but I'm just going to scroll down. You should, in some place under Course Resources, be able to see the Wiley Plus Read, Study, and Practice link. So I'm going to click on that. I don't believe I have any other Wiley Plus applications open, and I don't, because otherwise you'd probably get an error message at this point. So in the Read, Study, and Practice window, you see this, and you need to notice that you've got data sets over here where you see my mouse. I'm going to click on that, and here's all the many data sets you have to choose from. So you really just need to glance through, pick something that sounds interesting. So plenty to choose from. Now, because you're going to probably want to do your graphs using StatKey, and as you will hopefully remember from the course, when you import a data file into StatKey, you need it to be a CSV file. So in the Read, Study, and Practice, you see that there's many different formats available to you to open up these files. You're just going to want to open up a CSV. So I'm going to scroll down, and I see a file called Sandwich Ants. Because there's more than one Sandwich Ants file, I'm going to go ahead and pick one of these. And if you really feel like this is your topic, then I don't want you to think that I've stolen your topic. You could just go choose Sandwich Ants 2, because I'm going to choose Sandwich Ants, the original one for my illustration. So if you choose to do this in the Unit 9 discussion, just make sure you choose the Sandwich Ants 2 so that you're not using the exact same data set I am. You'll be getting totally different results. All right, so I'm going to click on the CSV file right here where you see this link. Open it up right here down at the bottom. And just to get a feel for what it looks like butter. No, that doesn't look too exciting because none of the sandwiches have butter on it. Filling, so it looks like I see Vegemite, peanut butter, and I'm going to click my mouse in between here and stretch it out a little bit so I can see the full names. Vegemite, peanut butter, ham, and pickles. And in fact, if I scroll down this list, that seems to be the only. So there looks like there are 3 types of fillings. There are different types of bread. If I stretch this out, you see that. And then ants. And because these look like numbers, we could guess that this is number of ants that, and again, some of this is going to depend on your creativity and coming up with a hypothetical scenario. But it appears to be possibly number of ants for a particular sandwich. Keep in mind that a row is like a case, an individual case. So for this particular Vegemite on rye, there were 18 ants recorded on that particular sandwich, and it looks like maybe 10 orders of this type of sandwich were made. So lots you could honestly do here, even though it's a pretty small data set. I am going to focus on the fillings. So that appears to be a qualitative variable. And I'm going to focus on ants. So like ant infestation or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to focus on ants for my quantitative variable and the fillings for my qualitative. I'm not going to worry about the types of bread or how many orders each had. That, somebody could use the same data set and look at those variables. These, with so many data sets available to you and so many variables involved, there's plenty of different research questions you could come up with so that every single classmate in the discussion should honestly have a different research question. All right. So if I go back to the, the wording of the question, then, and I actually just wrote some down, so I'll call them out to you. So in the discussion question, it asks you, what is the name of the data set you chose? Well, this one was sandwich ants. That's going to be easy to answer. What is your research question? So, back in unit 4, you learned how to develop your own research questions. I could actually say something like, is there a significant difference in ant infestation depending on the filling of the sandwiches? Or is there a significant difference in attraction of ants based on sandwich fillings? Something to that effect. So that would be my research question, or something to that effect. What are the variables of interest? Well, I would spell out that my fillings are my qualitative independent variable, and that ants is my quantitative dependent variable. Next question in the discussion, what type of hypothesis test do you run and why? Well, this is where you have to realize that we looked at many different tests for means, and because ants is quantitative, I'm going to be comparing means. But because I have 3 different types of fillings, so 3 groups, then it means that I am going to run a one-way ANOVA. I cannot do a t-test for means because I have more than 2 groups that I'm going to be comparing. So I would explain that in that particular question. What is the HO and the HA? So what are your null and alternative hypotheses? That you could, of course, refer back to your text for the different types of test and what to, how to write out the null and alternative hypotheses. You're going to need to know that for your final project anyways, for your final assignment. And then insert image of output and graphs from either Excel and or StatKey. So that is a matter of remembering how to run the different tests that we've learned in Excel. And StatKey is honestly a little bit better for getting the graphs because it allows you to do parallel box plots or parallel histograms and so forth that Excel doesn't quite have the capability to do them quite as nicely. So definitely I'm going to want to get this data set, this data file in the format so that I can do my analysis in Excel and do my graphs in StatKey. And then the next questions, what is the test statistic and p-value? That, of course, is going to depend on my one-way ANOVA output that I get. Compare my p-value to 0.05 and make my decision. That means, decide, give the p-value, compare it to 0.05, and state whether you're going to reject the null or fail to reject the null. And then the last question in the discussion, what is the conclusion and context? So, actually answer the question about, is there a significant difference in attraction of ants between the different sandwich fillings? So you'll have to put it back into the context of the research question. So those are the questions of the discussion. So what I'm going to actually do here, since I really only need the fillings and the ants, then I am actually going to go, you could either go to a brand new Excel file, which I might want to, actually I might go ahead and do that here. So let me go ahead and Control copy, and I'm going to just open up a brand new Excel file on my computer. And I'm going to just paste to get my fillings in there. And then I'm going to go back and get the number of ants. Where's my data set? Okay, here it is back here. So the number of ants. And put that right here. Okay. If I just wanted to do, one of the questions I had told you was insert image of output and graphs. So if I wanted to just do my graphs right now, then I would just save this as a CSV file so that I could import it into StatKey. So I'm going to actually go File, Save As, and I'm just going to put it in my desktop up here. But I'm going to save it as a CSV, delimited file right here. So remember to get CSV for your save as type. And then go ahead and get it on my, let me call this sandwich ants. All right, then I'm going to go open up StatKey. So I'm just going to type StatKey in Google, and it's typically going to be the first thing that gets pulled up. Click on that link. And because I've got one quantitative, which is number of ants, and one categorical, which is the filling type, then I'm going to click right here and click Upload File, and then go find my file. And it was this one actually right here on lowercase letters. Please select one quantitative variable first. Well, my quantitative is ants, so I'm going to click on that first. Notice it matches the color for my quantitative variable. And then one categorical variable. So I'm going to click on the column heading for my categorical, and it matches the yellow color here. Then click OK. And what I've got is 3 parallel dot plots for the 3 fillings and the number of ant observations for each. The dot plot's probably not the best type of plot. It's, it's just a little bit harder to read. They're all crammed together, and it's not really the most efficient type of graph to use. But part of the insert image said insert image of output and graphs. I would definitely use your snipping tool and snip this part right here, because this is your summary statistics. You've got your mean for the Vegemite. That's the average number of ants attracted to the Vegemite sandwiches, the average number of ants attracted to peanut butter, and the average number of ants attracted to the ham and pickles. It's got also your standard deviations, your 5-number summary. So I would use your snipping tool and go ahead and snip this and save that as an image and insert it as part of your response. But for the graphs, I'm going to prefer either to do the histogram, so I'll click on this tab right here, or the box plot. Now, already looking at the histogram and looking at the scale down here, I just already, in terms of casual observations, noticed that the ham and pickles filling appears to have a higher number of ants than the other 2 fillings. We don't know if that's going to be significant, if that's high enough that it's significantly different than the peanut butter Vegemite. We don't know that until, of course, we run the one-way ANOVA. But it's, I can at least tell some stuff from the histograms, more so probably than the dot plots or even the box plot. So if you want to do the histograms, I would use my snipping tool and snip right here. Make sure you get the labels and the scale included, and snip that, save it as an image so you can insert that as your graph, or if you prefer to do the box plot. The box plots also tend to show that the ham and pickles appears to be higher. And we might say it appears to be significantly higher, but we won't know if it's truly significantly higher or just maybe chance variation until we run the one-way ANOVA and look at our test statistic and p-value. But, if you prefer the box plot, go ahead and use your snipping tool and snip this, get those labels in there and the scale, and include that for your graph. So, you can either do the histogram or the box plot. If you want to do both, you can, if you feel like you want to use both in your discussion. But definitely get that included and the summary statistics included as part of your output and graphs that you were asked to include. For running the actual one-way ANOVA test, I'm going to go back and do that in Excel. You learned how to do it in Excel back in the unit when one-way ANOVA was covered. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But here's the tricky part with some of, the formatting that you need for different things. So let me open up the file. With Excel, when you run one-way ANOVA, you actually need each independent group in its own column. So what I'm going to do here is, in order to get my 3 independent groups into their own columns, I'm going to first sort the different fillings. So I'm going to highlight column A, or you could also just click and drag down the different filling names. Come up here and click sort and filter. Click on that and then just sort A to Z. When it says expand the selection, you want to keep the radio button checked there, because that's basically saying it's going to take all these number of ants and move them wherever the names of the fillings move. So make sure that is still checked by default and click sort. And now you've got all the different fillings in their respective, or at least sorted according to their respective groups. But I am going to actually now go ahead and form my 3 columns because I've got 3 groups. So I'm going to go ahead and take ham and pickles, and I'm actually going to move to the next sheet. So I just clicked on the little plus sign. I'm going to go ahead and put in ham and pickles. So sheet 2, ham and pickles. And then go back to the first sheet, and all of these are the number of ants for the ham and pickles. Notice it stops there because that was the last ham and pickle sandwich. So control copy, click on sheet 2, and I'm just going to do control V, regular paste, to get those numbers in. Then I'm going to go back to my original sheet. Now I'm looking at peanut butter, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag down these, control copy for that group, and put peanut butter. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit, and then I'm going to do control V there. It didn't take it, so I'm just going to go back and do it again. So peanut butter's control copy. Come up here, control V, and then go back, and we've got Vegemite. So type Vegemite. Control V there, and again, I need to go back. I might as well just wait and do that at the end. Control V. All right, so we've got what we need now in the format for Excel. So as you hopefully recall from learning this earlier in the course, to do one-way ANOVA, I'm going to click on Data up top, come over here to Data Analysis, and go up to ANOVA single factor. I'm doing one-way ANOVA with 1 independent variable and 1 dependent variable. 1 independent variable is the main reason why we call it one-way ANOVA. So I'm going to click on single factor, click OK, and it's wanting my input range. So I'm going to actually just click and drag over all of the input, but it is grouped by columns, and I did include labels in my first rows. That's really important. Set the alpha level at 0.05. It's going to automatically be set on that anyway by default. And I'm just going to click output range because I want my output in the same sheet. And I'll just, you can click any blank cell anywhere you want to. I'll just put it right. So I'm going to click my mouse in here, click right there so that in cell C14 is where it's going to paste my output, my one-way ANOVA output. So click in there and then click OK. Stretch out between C and D a little bit so that we can see everything, or if there's anything else that looks too crammed, overlapping, you just stretch out your columns and get some space in between them. Okay, so we can see some stuff. We already had seen our averages from StatKey, but this should agree with what we had gotten from StatKey. In fact, let me see if I've still got it up. So StatKey, 30.75. 34 and 49.25. And yes, that agrees with what we've got right here. So, it's just not quite as detailed as StatKey, but Excel has also given us the summary statistics, or at least some of them. But here is our ANOVA output down here at the bottom. So in the part of your discussion that said, include your output, you're going to want to use your snipping tool and snip all of this right here, or at least the ANOVA part. You don't necessarily have to snip the top part with your summary because you already would have included it from StatKey. So at least get this ANOVA output, because you're then going to be asked in the following question, what's your test statistic and p-value? Your test statistic, remember ANOVA uses an F test statistic. So here's your test statistic that you would include as your response to that question. And your p-value is 0.011. So in the following question, when it says compare your p-value to 0.05, you would give your p-value, say that your p-value is less than 0.05, and therefore you got a significant result, and you would say that you are going to reject your null. Now, what you want to add to that when it says, what is your conclusion in context? Remember that with ANOVA, when you run the basic one-way ANOVA test, all you can conclude when you reject your null is that at least one group mean is significantly different. It could be that all three group means are significantly different from each other, or it might just mean that only one is significantly different from the other two, but the other two are not significantly different from each other. We would not know that until we ran post-hoc tests. So in your conclusion, that's what you would say. And you've said that you're going to reject your null, but you would conclude that we conclude that at least one, ant attraction or ant infestation, at least one type of filling has a significantly different ant attraction. But what might be good for this, because you did back when you covered one-way ANOVA, had a live binder video that showed you how to do the post-hoc test using another website, you could even branch out further. Now, some of y'all are not going to do one-way ANOVA, and you wouldn't have this extra post-hoc step. But if you do choose something with one-way ANOVA, it's a very common type of hypothesis test, then I may actually go to that website that you learned back then and try to find out if, in fact, the ham and pickle sandwiches if the ham and pickle filling is the only one that's significantly different. And, if so, based on the means, we could say that specifically the ant attraction for ham and pickles is higher than for peanut butter or Vegemite. But we won't, like I said, we don't really know. It might be that all the sandwich fillings are significantly different from each other. So I'm going to actually go to Google and open up, and the website was vasserstats.net. Press enter there, and then I'm going to go over here to ANOVA, click on that. Go to one-way ANOVA and click on that. The number of samples I have is 3. I've got 3 groups that I'm comparing. And we're just going to do a basic independent samples. And go ahead and just do the typical weighted here. So if you click independent samples, it'll bring up what you need. It's the standard weighted means analysis. And it is ready for me to enter my 3 columns, but the good thing is it requires the same format that I needed for Excel. So I've already got everything, sorted in the way I need it. I'm going to go get the ham and pickles, which is my group 1. It's important to remember which groups you're group 1, 2, and 3 here for the Vassar Stats website. So I'm just going to control copy there, come back and click my mouse in this box and do control V. Then go back and get the, go back and get the peanut butter. Control copy there. Go back to the Vassar Stats website and in sample 2, click my mouse, control V there. And then go back and get the Vegemite, control copy. Notice I'm not including the labels. Come here and click there and then control V. And then I'm going to go ahead and calculate. Now we should get down here the same, notice the F-test statistic and p-values the same as what we got with Excel. We don't really need to include that again. But what I'm interested in is down towards the bottom when we see Tukey HSD. That is a name of a type of post-hoc test. And it is doing all the pairwise comparisons to see where the significant differences are. We could already tell from our 0.011 p-value that there's at least one group that's significantly different in terms of the average ant attraction. And when we compare 1 with 2, well, remember that was ham and, what was that? Ham and pickles compared to peanut butter. Remember it went ham and pickles is group 1, peanut butter is group 2, and Vegemite is group 3. So when we look at our Tukey's post-hoc results, we see that ham and pickles compared to peanut butter is significantly different. It says the p-value for that pairwise comparison is less than 0.05. That's significant. When we compare the mean 1, so the ham and pickles mean ant attraction with the Vegemite sandwich, it is also significantly different. We're getting a p-value less than 0.05. But when we compare the peanut butter to the Vegemite, we are getting a non-significant result. So in what is our conclusion? In context, after doing the post-hoc test, we can see that specifically the significant difference that's occurring is the ham and pickles sandwich is significantly different from both the peanut butter and the Vegemite sandwich. And specifically from looking at our sample means, we could tell that it had higher ant attraction. But yet the peanut butter and the Vegemite sandwiches are not significantly different in terms of their ant attraction. And, really that takes us all the way back to when we first were doing the graphs, and that's pretty much what the graphs look like. But remember, you cannot go by with the way something looks, because by the time you bring in sample size, means, standard deviations, sometimes the way something looks is not always the way it's going to turn out, which is why you go ahead and go through the complete statistical analysis. So that is, pretty much what's involved in the discussion this week. And you just have to maybe go back and review. If you don't remember how to do all the different tests or when each test is used, how you're going to recognize when to use which test, you'll want to review back over the earlier weeks for that, because that is also especially important when you're going to be doing your final assignment in here and having to sort out all the different types of tests and how to run the different types of analyses.